Parents, teachers, guardians, and mentors. We can all agree you've got big shoes to fill, and it may feel like they're always getting bigger and more daunting. Welcome to Parenting Adventures, where we aim to be a beacon of support and knowledge for those navigating the complexities of parenting. Each episode, we bring on experts to walk us through the most pressing issues facing families, with evidence-based, practical strategies. And if school struggles are part of the puzzle, check out how Tutor Teach can help. Now, let's dive into the episode.
Have you ever found yourself unsure how to handle your child's emotional outbursts or wondering if their impulsive behavior is something more serious? I'm your host, Lara Courtepatte, and today we're joined by Maureen Healy, an award-winning author, educator, and expert in children's emotional health. Maureen writes a widely read blog for Psychology Today that's reached millions globally, and her book, The Emotionally Healthy Child, has won multiple awards for its practical guidance to help children manage big emotions. With more than 15 years of experience working with parents, teachers, and kids around the world, Maureen brings a powerful blend of research, lived experience, and global perspective to this conversation. In today's episode, we talk about why impulse control might be a challenge for children, how brain development and age plays a role, and what parents can do in the heat of the moment when emotions run high. Maureen shares simple but effective tools like calm down kits, real-life examples, and strategies to help parents shift from self-blame to confidence. If you find your child having outbursts, this episode is full of insights to help you support their emotional growth and your own peace of mind. Let's just say you'll want to hear this one. Welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us. To start, I'd love to hear a bit about your personal story, background, and what led you to focus your career on children's emotional health.
It's a great question. And it wasn't like one exact moment per se, but I began my career coaching CEOs and the C-suite of consulting firms. And I often found that I was the person in the room helping people not behave like children. So I decided to go back to school, study child development and child psychology, and I actually studied child clinical psychology. But the part that I loved the most was really coaching and supporting kids and parents and families in home and school settings on how to feel and then ultimately do their best. So that was really the trajectory.
That's great. So you started with adults and then realized that you've got to start a little bit younger to get them to be more well-rounded adults, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was just, I figured if I'm going to use my time wisely, I would want to use it with young people so that their lives were really in a good trajectory versus with older people who were just, it was a little bit harder to get them to make great choices as adults, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that is funny. And it's fun working with little kids because it's the best conversations, I find. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I just love their little stories and kind of their imaginations and whatnot. So I imagine that no 2 days are alike for you.
That's true.
You've written quite a few books, including The Emotionally Healthy Child, which provides practical strategies for parents to help kids manage their emotions. Can you tell us more about the book and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, working with lots of parents and families in person and online all over the world, I was just seeing common patterns and threads of what I would say is ideas and strategies that were not necessarily taught in regular schools that people needed to learn. How do I feel my best? How do I handle different emotions, whether it's anger or sadness or frustration? And I wrote it before sort of social emotional learning was popped up and became really, I don't want to say a trend, but became something that's more commonplace in school systems. So when I was writing it, families kept coming to me saying, "Hey, what do I do? What? I mean, I'm having a hard time being less angry as a parent when my child is screaming at me, And my background is not only, Western science, but also Eastern wisdom. So I've studied Eastern traditions all around the world. So what's interesting about that is that they say, okay, these are emotions and this is how you handle them. They're very clear about this is what you do with anger. This is what you do with anxiety. This is what you do with worry. This is what you do with frustration. So there's a little bit of a integration of East and West in my book, The Emotionally Healthy Child, even though it's written for any person of any tradition or any background to pick up and use the coping skills and the evidence-based strategies. I wanted it to be accessible, but I wanted it to be sort of peel back the layers on what emotions really are, what emotional health really is, and how it just makes sense that if we can help children early on, they can learn how to handle some of these tricky or difficult or fast-moving emotions in a way that's more skillful.
That's fantastic. I love your holistic approach to pulling in the Eastern mindset with the Western tradition, because those would complement each other very, very nicely, actually. And more of that needs to happen, because there's some real pros to both mindsets and the way that they're applied. And so I think that's fantastic. And you're right. Schools have stepped up in supporting students more holistically as well, because perhaps there's more knowledge and resources and whatnot. But the biggest thing that I think is so important for young minds is that they learn to advocate for themselves on an emotional, mental, social, physical, what have you, psychological level. And that's very hard to not only teach a child, but for them to absorb and then translate in those moments of accountability.
Yeah, it's hard to be small in a big person's world with big feelings, right? And to be able to articulate that in a moment where you're being emotionally hijacked and saying, "Hey, I feel stress." So giving them the language, which is what you're talking about, I think, to really help them advocate for themselves, but also help adults understand what they're experiencing inside, because oftentimes we look with our adult eyes and it doesn't look exactly the way it's experienced. So helping understand that, I think, is helpful.
Absolutely. We just did a podcast recently with our guest who was saying that, for a child to be very upset about losing their favorite stuffed animal might seem really, really nothing to an adult, because it's hard for us to put ourselves back to losing our teddies as a kid. And so it's this self-regulation that has to happen as a parent, and this ability to address the way that they're feeling in a very human way from an adult lens.
Interesting, right? It's childhood can be a wonderful time, but it's also complex and sophisticated, and it can be tricky.
Absolutely. So we often hear from parents who feel overwhelmed when their child acts out impulsively, like hitting, shouting, or saying something hurtful without thinking. Why is impulse control so hard for kids? How does age play a role? And what's going on in their brains in those moments?
That's a great question. And knowing that we're all different personalities and characters, but we are similar in our emotions and how we experience life, even though it doesn't always look that way. Some of us tend towards more emotional or impulse control reactivity, quick reactions, let's put it that way. When a child is being overwhelmed with their emotions and they're emotionally hijacked and the right side of their brain is just flooded with feelings and thoughts, and it sort of knocks out the left side of the logic, you can't really talk to the logical side and say, "Hey, you need to take a minute." You have to connect and talk to the right side of the brain so we can take a beat and help them understand, that this too shall pass. But the idea of impulse control and reactivity, we have to have age appropriate expectations, right? So if we're talking about a 3 or 4-year-old, 4 is when logic comes online. So if I'm working with a 3-year-old, I have a wildly different expectation of what they can control or self-regulate than I do a 7-year-old, who I know is likely physically capable, but may tend toward, not being able to yet regulate their emotions or control their reactions or respond so quickly. Oftentimes, this is why mindfulness has become so popular. The idea of slowing down and paying attention without judgment, because if you can slow down, you can take a beat, right? Between stimulus and response, between a child wanting to scream and actually screaming. And I'm not saying that I have a problem with tears or loud voices or those different things. Obviously, they're difficult in the supermarket. They're difficult in the classroom. They can be difficult with neighbors, but helping our kids learn that all emotions are good, they're simply a sign of what's happening inside of ourselves, is important. And then giving them tools and ideas on how emotions work and what to do with them. And impulse control is really part of that, right? So a child that is what looks like, quote unquote, behaving badly is really the message to adults is, in that moment when a child looks like they're behaving badly, they're really just saying, "Hey, I'm experiencing a feeling. I don't know what to do with it yet. Like, I don't have the skills for this feeling." So they're basically sending up a flag saying, "I don't have the skills. I don't know what to do. I need your help." Even though it might look like someone hitting a wall or jumping, stomping their feet or screaming. So it's remembering in those moments that there's nothing more important than the child in front of you, even though you might be late for work, even though all sorts of different things are happening. We have to sort of do our best in that moment to stay as calm and centered as we can, because what a child does is he or she will take our feelings, make them bigger, and send them back. So if we're stressed out and angry and frustrated and send it that way to a child, they're just going to make it bigger and send it back. So that's why it's helpful. And nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes and snafus. But the idea is that we want to do our best to stay calm, even when our children or students aren't calm, so that we can lead them to a calmer place. And I think it's really important that we don't take it personally. Like, it's not personal. It's just a function of their brain development at this point in time. They may be showing up in screaming, or they may be showing up in crying, or they may be showing up and hitting their sibling or neighbor. So it's learning, okay, let's pause and take a beat and let's work on something, and then we can move forward.
Well, and like you mentioned, some of it's developmental. I mean, like our baby right now, she bit my foot the other day, which is fine. Like, it didn't hurt me or anything, and she was gentle to do it, but she's just kind of like in that oral phase of trying to like see what things feel like in her mouth and things, and and then it can escalate. Like, I had one of our kids was biting at about 3, but he did overcome it, and it feels like almost a little bit like, what am I doing wrong? Why is my child biting his friends? Or why is this happening? But like you said, there's so much of it that's developmental too, and that they're feeling out their boundaries and seeing where it all falls and what the reactions are going to be, and then trying to teach them in a calm way how to navigate that.
Right. And of course, we all have different personalities, right? So there's one personality child that might run hot and be quick to anger. Another personality might be more, quick to feel withdrawn and sad and just want to go to their room. So it's not only learning about the emotions and what to do with them as far as reactivity and impulse control, it's what works with your child, right? Like, in this moment, in this stage of development, knowing, like you said, 6 months, a year from now, it's going to be totally different.
Exactly. And that must be harder in situations like a classroom or a camp or something with a group of kids, because that's when the mentor at the helm has trouble individually supporting these kids, because they're in a group of 18, 20, sometimes 40. And so that's where teaching your kid those self-regulation and impulse control and whatnot would come in handy, because they're not the sole child that's being looked after anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, for example, I've worked with a lot of families, and we say, all right, we'll get a calm down kit, like a backpack full of things that calm your child down, whether it's a headset or whether it's a squeezy, whether it's their favorite book or a stuffy or whatever it may be. Maybe it's just drawing, but getting something together so they can begin, like you said earlier, to recognize, oh, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. If I don't handle this annoyed and frustrated, it's going to get to angry, and then I might, like a volcano, explode. So can I go get my calm down kit and begin to self-regulate at an early age? First grade, second grade, they can begin to say, all right, maybe I get my kit and things don't have to go completely off the rails.
That makes me think of my second born. He when he was younger, he did not like when other kids scribbled instead of colored. And he thought, I'm not doing this. I'm not surrounding myself by these scribbles. And he'd walk up and rip up their paper. And we would talk to him about, like, everyone has a different imagination and a different creative outlet. And perhaps scribbling for them is their art. And he brought this up recently because he said, I can't believe I did that. And I was like, you were only 3 or 4. So of course, but you learned your way through it. Now he sees his younger siblings scribbling and he doesn't think anything of it. But at the time, he was very fixated on that. And we had to give him the tools to not be bothered by the way that other kids color, which in his mind was scribbling.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but kids can be annoying. Even when you're a kid, other kids are like, oh, why are they doing that? Why are they, whatever, fill in the blank.
Yeah, that's funny. So when a parent sees their child losing control, it can be really emotional, hard to know what to do in the moment. What's the first thing you recommend a parent focus on, both for themselves and their child, when impulse control seems to go out the window? Let's use a common example of maybe the child's throwing an epic fit in the grocery store, because we've all seen it happen. We've all had it happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every family is different. I mean, if you can leave the grocery store and what you're getting is not urgent, then do that. I mean, But if it's something that you need and you're the only adult there, you're in a difficult situation, right? Because you're not in a situation where you can raise your voice. Not that that's ideal, but I mean, you always want to have your child feel calm or learn how to begin to calm. And sometimes that includes saying, okay, we can deal with this, but we got to deal with this in 5 minutes. After we get out of this, pull it together. I mean, if you have another child, maybe they both go back into the car. I mean, there's so many different scenarios, but there are situations where we don't have a lot of options, right? But we always have a choice on how we respond to this situation. And sometimes it's tricky because we need to get something, whether it's the grocery store, milk, or whatever it is we need for dinner or for tomorrow, or we're the one person and this is the one moment and our house is an hour away or whatever it is. It puts us in a little bit of a tricky situation. But in the flip side, people tend to be pretty compassionate. We've all been in situations. I'm not saying they are all the time, but it's not a plane where you can't land for 5 hours. It's 10, 15 minutes, we get it over with and we solve it. But those are difficult situations. But I think on the flip side, it's good practice to learn patience and tolerance and recognize that, this is a difficult situation. Maybe that night we do Instacart if that's available to you. I don't know if it is, like delivery, but there are tricky situations. But I think the biggest, most important part is for us to have some sort of, whether it's a motto or a mantra or an idea or a prayer. I always think this too shall pass. Like in the moment, it's so hard to remember the child screaming at you is the thing that you love more than anything, right? But that's in the moment, you want to be able to help them through their behavior that's not so great, which we talked about earlier. That's they're just saying, I'm having an experience I don't know how to handle. I don't have the skills for this. So to have some compassion for them, saying they don't have the skills for whatever is going on with them. But I also think it's important to be honest with them and say, hey, we are in the grocery store. I could lose it right now too, by the way, and that would not look good. But can you try and keep it together, and we will solve this when we get in the car, and try and work together. And maybe the solve is that we can't solve it, or that we can do XYZ tomorrow, or whatever it is. I think it's important to help them recognize they're safe and that we will work together to come to whatever agreement we can.
And like you said, sometimes ejecting from the environment, even for like go to the car, let them cool down. The cart will probably still be where you left it, and then pick it back up. Because just like adults, they need a moment, they need space. And I don't believe for a second any child is throwing those public fits, for lack of temper tantrums, for attention from other people. It's something that's beyond them. And they often, especially the younger kids, don't even know what the trigger was. It could be that they're hungry and they don't know how to tell you. It could be that they're tired and they don't know how to tell you. It could be that it's at the end of a long day and they were just at, some sort of childcare facility for 8 hours. There's so much going on with these little heads, and they don't know how to express that to us necessarily, especially when they're younger.
Yeah. And I guess working with parents, I would say this is a great opportunity when you do a postmortem to say, okay, well, what was the trigger? What can I learn from this? Meaning, was it the bright lights of the supermarket? Was it the noise? Was it the lack of food? Was it the stressful day? And obviously we can't control our environment all the time, but we can navigate, if we think, oh, this place is definitely going to be a trigger, maybe I don't do this now. Or how do I help him or her get prepared, knowing we are going into a store, there's going to be bright lights, there's going to be a lot of noise, whatever it is. Sometimes it's helpful to begin to learn to say, okay, my child is either highly sensitive or highly, whatever it is, like what are their triggers, so I can help them with them. Because ultimately, I think our goal is to give them the tools that they can, use so that they can contribute their great gifts to the world.
Absolutely. So can you walk us through what a parent can do in the moment when impulse control completely breaks down at home instead of out in public? So if it's bath time, bedtime, morning time, something like that?
I don't want to take a bath. I'm not taking a bath. I will never take a bath again.
And maybe they throw the soap across the room, or
absolutely
something like they find the plug for the tub and they hide it, or something like that.
Right. Which, I mean, they're kids, right? These are sort of normal behaviors. But I think that that's where you bring humor into it. You say, did you throw the soap? Did someone else throw the soap? Am I imagining this? You try to recognize that, we're supposed to be having fun in life, right? And there are times that as adults we get a little too serious, but we also have to recognize that, like, hey, there are times to fool around and then times to be serious. And I'm a big fan. I wouldn't as much say a star chart, but I'm a big fan of incentivizing kids. If we know the tub is tricky, or we know the time before getting to school is tricky, like which time, how do we help them do? Because oftentimes kids are pretty capable. They can pull it. If you tell them, hey, if you take a tub and you do it and you clean your body and you brush your teeth and you comb your hair, you can have, I don't know, it could be a fruit salad, it could be yogurt, it could be ice cream. It doesn't matter to me. You can have a little treat before you go to bed. It doesn't have to be sugar laden, but it could be something. They'll do it if they feel, or maybe it's a 5 minutes of TV, or that could be a trigger too, right? So, or you get special time where I read to you, or whatever it may be. It's important that the child selects what's interesting to them, because one child might have just more time with mom, or more time with dad, or more time, getting a big hug, or whatever it may be. But helping a child really have some power and say, hey, I can do this. I'd love to get XYZ. Not that everything wants to be a negotiation, but I'm a big fan of empowering kids to say, hey, you have a voice and a choice in this family. I need to get you to be clean. That's how we roll in this family, is that we go to school and we're clean. So how do I help you do that? And you can help me do that, because, I've had a long day. I mean, you don't want to like put all this stuff on your kids, but you want to be honest with them that you are a team as a family and you're an important part of the team. And I want to make you happy and you want to make me happy. We want to work together and do our best. So I think those kind of partnership conversations are important.
I remember when I was kind of not figuring one of my kids out. My mom said to me, "You need to figure out what their currency is. Their currency. What is it? Is it extra time with you? Extra time with both of you? Extra time with dad? Is it staying up 15 minutes late? Is it drawing, coloring? Figure out their currency, and you will be on the path to success." And really, for our kids, it's quality time. And so we incentivize them through quality time, which is nice, because parents are thinking incentivization. Oh, spend more money. Oh, it doesn't have to be. It can be something so simple as an adult, which is so big for a child.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that your mom said the currency, because that's how I think of it too, is like, what is meaningful to them? Because if they can realize, oh, I have control, I can move this in a way that I can get that, they can pull it together, right? They can perform well, but if you feel like there's nothing in it for me, I'm frustrated, I got to go to school again tomorrow, I can't stand brushing my teeth, then you're like, oh, you have to really do your best. It's almost like a bonus for someone in a big time corporation. It's like, oh, you want me to sell that and I get that? Okay, I can do that. It's like A plus B for kids. It's like you make it really clear. They want to figure out the formula to be happy too.
Yeah, it's like getting a commission off a sale kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. So when a child continues to act impulsively or is deregulated, and parents might blame themselves or feel like they're failing, how can we help parents shift that mindset so they feel supported and empowered instead? And how can they tell when impulsive behavior might be a sign of a deeper issue that needs more attention?
Well, I think it's a function of age, right? So if you told me there's impulse control issues at 4, I'd be like, well, that's typical. If you told me they're at 7, I'd say, all right, we'll work on that. If you told me at 10, I'd say, okay, we really need to work on that. If you told me at 13, I'd say, this is a problem. If you see that it's progressively getting better, that's a good sign. If you see that it's just always the same, they always are having problems with when you put the food on the table, not waiting to eat until everyone's at the table. Like if they always are having some sort of self-management issues. I think there are different kids who have, for lack of a better explanation, like addictive personality styles. So like, they have a hard time putting down the iPad. They have a hard time having one piece of candy. They have a hard time. So it's that type of child that tends to have really big reactions and really big impulse control issues. And that only tells me that they're someone who likes to get immersed in something. They like to really go all in, and that's not a bad quality. Oftentimes those kids are stubborn and make more money in the future years because they stick with problems longer. But as a child, you want to help a child learn how to be moderate and how to have a balance and to be able to pick something and then put it down, or to everything isn't, the best or the worst, right? So you want to help them be able to sort of moderate their reactions and their experience, knowing that everything that they're feeling is true and good, but that they learn how to really learn, I would say, emotional regulation, little by little, more coping skills. So I think about it like stress. So some kids have a lot of stress and they eat a lot to alleviate the stress. It's not a great healthy habit per se, or they do addictive, screen time to alleviate stress. So it's learning how to have a moderate balance and make healthy choices that are good for their body and their mind. And it's a practice, right? We're all learning, right? It's not like you're 7 or 8 or 9. It's like you learn throughout your whole lifetime. Like what works when you're 20 probably doesn't work when you're 60. So it's helping them make good choices. And if they have a hard time regulating their emotions or with impulse control, it's just a practice. You have to little by little say, okay, well, when they feel stressed, this alleviates their stress. Are there healthier ways that we can do it?
So if you were to give parents like 3 ways to approach that, what would be the 3 stops they should make when trying to help their child succeed in managing their emotions and impulsivities? And
besides reading my book, The Emotionally Healthy Child.
Okay, number 1, read the book. Okay, that's fine. Number 1, read the book.
But whether it's that book or another book, the idea of understanding what emotions are and how they work is really important. That's why I wrote the book, because if kids don't understand how emotions work, they can't really manage them. So if you, let me give you an example. For example, if I said to a child, wow, when you were angry, what did it feel like? Were you bigger than the anger, or was the anger bigger than you? 100% of the time they say, oh, the anger was bigger than me. Well, that's not true. You're actually bigger than your anger. So you can't make a smart choice with anger if you don't even feel like you're bigger than the anger, if you don't feel like you're in control. So helping them understand what the emotions are and how they work so that kids can begin to make better choices with them, and that they can slow down. Like that feeling of like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. If I do the screen time, I'll feel better, is a choice. But you can say, all right, well, what other choices exist? I feel stressed. Can you take a bicycle ride? Can you go for a walk? Can you jump rope? Can you play basketball? Can you read a book? Like there's lots of different choices. So in my book, I do talk about a smart choices checklist, which is something good for you and good for others. So you can make 3 choices, have things identified, like when you feel stress or you feel big emotions or you feel frustrated, what are 3 things you can do, whether it's at home or in the classroom, and the kids come up with them. I can walk away. I can throw a basketball hoop. I can walk the dog or pet the dog. There's lots of different things you can do, but if they identify more than one thing that helps them, it could be breathing, right, in the classroom, so you don't have to go get something. Deep breaths, whether it's box breaths or certain types of breaths, but being able to help them recognize that if they do something or think something differently, they can have a different experience, I think is very important.
That's great. And do you find that children regulate themselves differently when they're with their familiars, which is at home with their parents and family, versus being in a public spot where the parents are completely removed? So maybe at school during, ball practice, something like that. Do they have different emotional regulation control abilities, and why is that?
So they don't have different abilities. Obviously, we're one human. Each human has, the different capabilities, but in different settings, we have different needs, just like we talked about earlier with currency. Like the currency for your kids is quality time. So oftentimes the currency at school is like, I want people to like me. I want the teacher to like me. I want to feel good. I want to do my best. So that's usually not the currency at home. At home, it's like, I want to feel great. I don't care if my parents like me. They're not returning me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so that you can let it all out. So oftentimes kids will hold things in school that they let out at home. So if someone was like, you went to a parent-teacher meeting and you heard them say, oh, you have such a wonderful child. They behave wonderfully every day. And you're like, what? You've met my child? What? So that just says that child is holding everything in during the day and then letting out at home. So you want to give them tools where they feel at school they can release things at school so they don't have to hold it all in. So they can journal, or they can take a walk or take a deep breath. So that would be what that was indicative of.
So like you mentioned earlier, an overall balance, not just holding it all in for one person or one place, finding a way to balance themselves out regardless of environment.
That's right. Yeah, you want to have them have an invisible coping skills backpack. And maybe when they're younger, elementary school or primary, they can have a literal backpack with a journal or coloring or whatever it is, a headset. But eventually you want to have a backpack that you don't necessarily, it could be invisible inside of you, that you take a deep breath, you say a mantra, you sing a song, or whatever it is, you take a walk, and then, okay, I feel better again.
That's great. So before we wrap up, if listeners want to explore more of your work, where's the best place for them to go?
That's a great idea. Where do you want to go? Growinghappykids.com is my website. My last book was the Happiness Workbook for Kids. That's for kids. And the adult version is the Emotionally Healthy Child. And that's probably the easiest, growinghappykids.com.
Great. Do you have any social media?
All the regulars.
All the regulars. Okay. That's good.
But you can, if you go to growinghappykids.com, it's all listed, whether it's Instagram or Twitter.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I think this was a great conversation. I doubt that there's not one parent who listens to this who can't put themselves in one of the situations you just pulled out there, whether it was at home, grocery store, bath time, supper time. We've all been there, but it's good to know that we're not alone and that there are tools and resources to support us through this crazy ride called parenthood.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this episode of Parenting Adventures. Thanks for listening. We hope it gives you that extra bit of confidence that you need to conquer the road ahead. And if you're looking for academic support to ensure your kids thrive in school, visit tutorteach.ca to learn how we're here for families just like yours. We'll see you in the next episode.